to the Retrograde
video game podcast, where this week we punch a ticket to Crow Country.
Oh, my name is Andrew Bascom. With me, as always, is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself,
Brandon Leakey, Aaron Worth.
That is all I wanted to talk about was the Crow.
Yes.
Because you know there's a new Crow coming out this year.
Yeah, with Hollywood's creep, Bill Skarsgård playing him.
You know that creepy character, and you know it's kind of like a weird backstory where the actor died playing it. You're like, oh, Bill Skarsgård will do that.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Do you know him?
100%.
He's like, no, I just have a feeling.
I have a feeling. Like, I have a friend who recently, they work in the service industry, and Bill Skarsgård showed up at their bar restaurant.
Sure.
And I had a ton of questions for them. I was like, did you tell him that, like, did you ask him if he knows how creepy he is? Like just generally speaking, like, Bill. You know Bill. Like, you're a creep, right? Like good for you, but the movie Barbarian wouldn't work if you weren't just inherently creepy in real life. You know that, right?
You know that people find him attractive, right?
Oh, yeah. Like,
there's
people also find Ted Bundy attractive. I think people like danger.
Okay, I think that's it. There's a very thin line between being like, that guy's terrifying.
Yeah.
I kind of want to kiss him. Like, you know, I think he's also quite tall.
Yeah, I think he's like 6. I think all the Skarsgårds are, which is another
Except
thing.
for Stellan.
Oh, isn't Stellan?
Is Stellan tall?
I think so.
I don't know. It's just, he's a very built man. So
So
I
can't really tell.
Yeah,
He's
robust. Yes.
That's the other thing is like, hey,
Looks
Bill,
happy. Yeah.
Isn't it weird that your dad played a robust floating goop monster in Dune, and you're still the creepiest one in the family? I'm sorry, I like Bill Skarsgård.
He's not in costume. You're like, whoa, Jesus. What the hell was that? He's like, hi, my name's Bill. It's like, no, geez, Bill.
Did Stellan shadow you to play the character in Dune 2?
It is funny, though. He's like rail thin, and the other guy's like, 700 pounds.
Yeah.
Bill Skarsgård also the villain in John Wick 5. What was that? The latest one?
Yeah. The bad one.
Having the most... No, the last one?
We've talked about this on the podcast.
You didn't like
before.
it?
I really didn't like it.
Oh, it's like one of my favorite movies of the year. Wow, that's crazy. Once again, if someone could guess, what does Mikey like?
What does Mikey like? That should be a segment on the podcast. What does Mikey like? And people can vote in.
Okay.
You can vote in today to see whether or not we liked Crow Country. Crow Country came out on May 9th. It's available on Steam, PS5, Xbox Series S and X, and there's a demo available on Steam.
Yeah.
This is what we did. The whole thesis that we were coming at it with was, if we play this 30-ish minute demo, will it convince us to want to buy the game? I have a soft spot in my heart for these kind of PS1 era survival horror games, and I suppose we should describe kind of what Crow Country is.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I was really going to take to it. Do you have a history with these PS1 era survival horror games?
Not as much. I didn't play a ton of survival horror in the 90s. That was more something with later console generations that I started playing more. So
back when they got good.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but like, I think I was like, okay, finally I'll do it. I'm like, this is pretty good. And people are like, thanks. So this specific thing that we played with Crow Country, with that graphics and that, style, no, not as much.
Yeah.
But this was a big thing for you.
It was. I mean, I struggled a little bit with the Resident Evil games. When you think back to those kind of heavily pixelated, slow paced, low on ammunition, tank control games like the Resident Evils, it was the control mechanics that really prevented me from getting into them. So as much as I liked the idea of that, I'm also a scaredy cat. So I really struggled with the idea of spending 20, 30 hours with these games. But as time went on and the controls got better, I felt less afraid because I had more control over what I was doing. And that's where Crow Country comes in.
Right.
The pixelated, low res kind of look and feel of it is reminiscent of a PlayStation 1, even worse than the Resident Evil. Like like you described it in our gameplay segment, which is over on our YouTube channel. We played the full 30-minute demo from start to finish. I had a blast, not to tip my hands too much. But you should go over there and watch that before you listen to the rest of the episode, because it'll kind of color this. But you mentioned the look and feel of the characters, the character models. Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I said they look like a Playmobil character.
Which is perfect. Yeah. That's exactly what they look like.
They do. They look like balls and tubes. Like a ball is your elbow, a tube is your forearm, a ball is your hand. Yeah, like kind of thing. And
what about like how would you describe someone's like feet using balls and tubes? Like, how would that work?
Yeah, that's tough. There's probably a triangle in there somewhere.
Yeah,
it doesn't really fall in the
What
ball.
about like a little higher, that like the leg? How would you describe
leg?
Is
tube.
Leg is tube, but
knee
maybe
is
the
knee is ball.
Yeah, and then just above the legs,
big tube.
How big?
I don't know. It depends. Mara Forrest, special agent. Don't forget.
Mara Forrest, the name of the main character in the game. Yeah.
Kind of what did you think about the writing of the game?
So very self-aware. Now, if there's one element of Silent Hill, Resident Evil style survival horror games from this era, it's that the puzzle mechanics and the writing are very cheesy, whether it has to do with a bad translation or just an inherent cheesiness to it.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like, I think it's a little off-putting, but it's so integral to the fabric of those games that it would be weird if Crow Country didn't mimic it at all. If the puzzles all made sense, if there weren't different colored keys, if it wasn't like find an egg-shaped thing and put it in this hole.
Yes. And then multiple times they explain egg-type rocks.
Yes.
Egg-type, blank,
exactly. If they didn't have that, it would have been weird, but the way that they do it in Crow Country is very self-referential.
Right.
And it's very clear that they know what they're doing. It's very self-aware, and so I liked the writing. Did you like it?
So it's funny. It's the style of writing we're talking about is you'll get these memos that are on walls that are written as staff things. So it's at just so we know, there is a murder that has happened. We think there is a murder. There's a murder.
Someone disappeared.
Yes. And the last time they were saw was in Crow Country,
right?
Which is a theme park
that this person, I think Edward Crow or something like that, owned.
Yes, it wasn't just a coincidence.
No.
That'd have been so sad.
So sad.
But so inside of that, you're inside of a theme park that is abandoned.
Yeah.
Great. And there's these staff memos on the walls kind of communicating, where did this go? Why did I lose this? Right? So you get those. You also get tips and tricks, like magazine type thing.
Uh-huh.
And then you get also the classic survival horror detective noir style thing where like they'll pick up a key and go like, I wonder what this key does.
Uh-huh.
Like to themselves, right? And so that's the kind of writing we're talking about. I found the memos to be interesting and funny. To be self-aware a little bit, but I found Mara Forrest's stuff to be like aggressively annoying. Like it's like, my name's Forrest, Mara Forrest, special agent. Don't you forget. You better not forget.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck, dude? Like, just like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I'm just sitting here. And I found that to be kind of odd, even though they don't really go back to it almost at all.
Yeah.
But the other stuff, did it feel like a theme park to you? That was the other thing. I never felt like it was a theme park. I felt it was like a series of hallways.
So that's interesting because being a theme park, obviously this isn't a Canada's Wonderland. This isn't a Six Flags. This isn't a which one's that?
Disney World, Disneyland.
Which ones are those?
Disney Sea, Tokyo Disney,
Disney
Europe
Sea. Is that like Canada's Wonderland but Disney themed?
Yeah, kind of.
Paramount Canada's Wonderland.
Oh, was that?
Paramount Canada's Wonderland?
That hasn't existed for like 15 years.
No, now it's just Canada's Wonderland, right?
Now it's just Canada's Wonderland. It's owned by another thing. There's a theme park just outside Toronto. Do you know, I think the biggest theme park though is the West Edmonton Mall.
Is that true?
Yeah. So the West Edmonton Mall is like
I think it's the biggest mall in
I think
the
that's
world.
the one in Minnesota. No,
is that
the
true?
one in Minnesota is the one big one, and then there's like I could do too long on this, but then it's always going to be like Dubai's got the biggest one. You're like, yeah,
of course, because they're just like looking through Guinness Book of World Records. Like, what's the biggest of these things that we feel?
And assigning.
Yeah. West Edmonton Mall has a ski hill in it.
Yes,
but here's the thing that I've always questioned about those sorts of buildings.
Yeah,
like. Sure, it has a ski hill. It's not a fun ski. I guarantee you it's the worst ski hill. You're in Alberta. Like, you can find other places to go skiing, some really good places.
Some very, very nice skiing places.
And instead you're going to go to the mall and you're like, let me check out GameStop and then shred a little bit. I don't know. Like, that sounds stupid.
Other than if you were like, you're like, I have to go shopping. You're like, oh, you have to go shopping? You're like, I'm going to go skiing. You're like, okay, cool. Instead of just standing or sitting on a bench, like those lonely men benches,
right? That
always just men are just sitting there like asleep or on their phones,
or the massage chairs that just look like the worst things in the world.
Kind of just like shaking, it's like violent. Like I've been in here 2 days. Like help me.
But in order to do that, it's like it's one thing to bring a Kindle to pass the time. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to bring your full ski suit and skis to pass the time in case your loved one wants to go check out like La Senza or something like that.
Yeah. Like I'm gonna go to Barnes and Noble, pick up a book, and you're like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna do a couple runs.
Yeah.
That's bananas.
So it isn't like one of those theme parks. It's instead like intimate and, well, to be fair, we didn't explore the whole thing. This is more like one of those Wonka World things.
It is like a Wonka World in Scotland thing.
Yeah.
Which of course has the classic ghoul that of course everyone knows from Willy Wonka.
100%.
I would say the thing is, but even if we didn't explore all the areas, even going to Fairy Tale Land or whatever the hell it's called.
Yes. which is a part of
right.
Yeah.
So you walk in, there's kind of like a 4-section, or you can go into 3 sections, right? 2 of them are locked initially, so you go to the one that's unlocked. It's Fairy Tale Land. And you kind of go down a hallway and it's going like, hey, do this and walk into this room. And then you go into a smaller room.
Yes.
Never in my experience has been a theme park, a room to a smaller room.
Where are they putting the carousels? It's not.
Where's the roller coaster? Where's the Ferris wheel? You know what I mean?
Now, that would have been like obviously a choice, to be able to use the aesthetics of a theme park without, kind of like confining yourselves to the era of PS1. You couldn't have these wide open spaces, even like a Silent Hill where you're walking around the streets of the titular Silent Hill.
Yes, of course.
It's not like you're in these really detailed areas. It's a street and it's wide and it's kind of like dilapidated.
Right.
So this at least is confined in a way that's like, it has the makings of a theme park, but you're right, it doesn't feel like a theme park.
I know this feels very small. Like I don't want it's not like I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. Like, well, now it didn't feel like a theme park, so this game sucks and we should never, play it again. But it is a kind of odd place to present a game or to set a game when it's not going to really feel like the thing.
Yes.
I'm not, off the top of my head, can I think of anything immediately? Maybe a maze. I have no idea. But like, it does feel a little odd, or maybe like even a museum or something.
A museum could have worked.
Yeah,
could have worked.
Art gallery or something.
The quirkiness though of like, here's a swan ride, like that. Like, how do you fit that in? I think it's just like, in PlayStation 1 era, if you wanted to make something set in a theme park, this was the only way you could do it.
Right.
And therefore you have to like dull your senses and expectations a little bit and kind of heighten your or lower your disbelief. There's
a part of me that goes Chuck E. Cheese to Five Nights at Freddy's.
See, Chuck E. Cheese would have been that kind of thing would have been a great.
See, Five Nights at Freddy's is doing really well, amazingly. That movie, gangbusters, right? And so I can imagine a designer going like, how do we get our own Five Nights at Freddy's? What is something that everyone has a common reaction with, a common experience with that we could do in our own thing? And it does feel like, okay, they got Chuck E. Cheese and Five Nights at Freddy's. What if we got a theme park version of it, like Westworld, where all the robots come back to life and try and kill you?
Yeah. But
I get that.
The weird thing about this is like, it clearly isn't animatronics coming to life in a theme park. There are like corpses. Sure? No, they were like corpses and like, every like piles of human bodies.
Yes.
The whole thing, the mystery that's kind of unraveling is that there's a dig site going on and they're sort of unearthing almost like a Lovecraftian horror of some sort. So the enemies are these mutated monsters that look kind of humanoid giant skeletons or like piles of flesh or something like that.
But they also seem to be characters in the park.
Maybe. It's tough to tell. See,
it's a demo, right?
It's not only a demo, but because of the graphics.
Oh, that's
you're
true.
Kind of like, what are you trying to be right now?
I laughed so hard at the idea that there's so we meet Arthur Mole.
Yes.
Arthur Mole. I don't know. And we find him injured kind of halfway through the park. And
he was there investigating.
He was investigating. Yeah. We find his Polaroid that was, cast astray when he got hurt. And half of a Polaroid's coming out and it's very blurry. And it's like, I almost got a picture of them. And I laughed so hard at the picture that is blurry. I'm like, that's pretty much what they look like though. Like that's,
you couldn't tell if it was blurry or just the graphics of this game.
Do you imagine a photo comes out, it's like 4K HD. I'm like, whoa, that's what they look like. And then you look up and you're like, what's wrong with that one then? Like
honestly, that would be the kind of joke that I like a wink to the camera that would have like a live action photo would have been very funny in something like this.
Yeah.
Let's take a step back and kind of color what this game is all about, some of the release and the development of it. And then we'll get a little bit more into the mechanics and the gameplay and all that stuff. By the way, before I do this, I have a question for you based on something you said like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, sure.
If you
said a lot,
I know you said you have said a lot, too much. Some might argue.
Yeah.
I know you've said in the past, maybe not on the podcast, but I'm doxing you right now.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do, by the way, is doxing people.
Oh,
that's
100%.
the best.
Oh, it's so good.
You've said that, maybe you don't want to have kids.
Right.
But let's imagine a scenario in which you have kids. You got a newborn baby.
Okay.
You're bathing that baby.
Yeah.
You're bad at bathing babies.
Yeah.
The baby drowns.
Oh, no.
Now you've got
killed my son in this situation.
Or daughter, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
The baby has drowned in the bathtub. Now you have a bathtub full of water with a baby in it.
Right.
I mean, at that point, throw out the baby with the bathwater.
No. How would I?
What do you mean?
That baby's not going to go down the drain.
You pull a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, take out the entire appliance, huck it out the window.
I'd probably have to wait for the police.
Or
this
is like fresh out of the vagina baby.
Oh, okay.
That's where they come from.
Yeah.
The vaginas.
Mostly, yeah.
Trying to think. Oh, C-section?
Yeah.
That's not a cunt section?
Oh, boy. Jesus Christ.
That's not how that works?
Really glad you brought up this line of questioning that's just burying yourself.
But you would throw out the baby with the bathwater in that situation.
I don't think you would. There's a lot of things stopping you.
In what situation are you throwing out just bathwater without, like, why are you like, we have to throw out this bathwater?
Okay, so you're trying to say that the expression makes no sense?
Mm-hmm.
This might be the only one in English where this doesn't make any sense, huh?
I think usually you can make some sense of it.
Uh-huh.
How to skin a cat. It's just fun to skin cats, and there are a lot of ways to do it.
This wouldn't shock me that we found out, like, in some weird book that you're going to write one day, you're like, yeah, like, this character's really into torturing animals as a kid. I'm like, oh, boy.
Oh, no. We have, by the way, this is hot breaking news. We have a dog in the studio, and the dog is rubbing itself on the carpet so close to the cameras. And
the weirdest part is there is no dogs that live in this apartment. So I don't know where the hell it came from.
We should throw out the apartment with the dog, I think.
Yeah.
Let's make a new saying out of this.
Famous dog.
Okay, so this game, I mentioned on the gameplay segment, and I highly recommend you go do that. It's a tight 30 minutes. We play through the whole demo. You'll get a sense of what it's like. Even if you're just thinking of buying it, watch this. It's developed by SFB Games. SFB Games had made like a ton of games since 2002. What are you laughing at?
I'm not laughing at the dog. It's rubbing his face in the carpet.
All over the carpet.
And it looks like heaven.
It looks like it's really enjoying it. It's a basset hound.
It's a big old droopy dog.
Big old droopy dog. There's a lot of folds to scratch.
They're big dogs. I didn't know basset hounds are this big.
They're so big. We don't have a camera on him right now, but he is 70 pounds and he's a foot off the ground.
Jesus Christ. Look at the paws. Like, they're huge. They look like a dinosaur.
It's crazy because I have a Shiba Inu.
Oh, yeah.
And this is my girlfriend's dog.
Okay.
And my Shiba is the same height, weighs 25 pounds. And it's amazing that they're the same species.
Wow. Okay, we'll stop commenting on the dog no one can see.
But we'll probably return to it.
Yeah.
Developed by SFB Games, as I mentioned. They made a ton of games. Of note, I would say Detective Grimoire and the series of those games. That one's pretty common. We're moving the camera. We're moving the camera.
Okay, I'm still good.
No, we're still good. I'm just going to have to move it. Here, I'm actually going to help the dog. Vamp for a second?
Yeah, 100%. So, oh man, it's a big dog. You know what's so funny? Those good
Vamp for a second? It's a big dog.
You gotta take our word for it. It's a big dog. You were talking about Holstein? Remember that game we played?
Holstein. Yeah.
Holstein.
Yeah.
Very similar to that.
Very similar.
I want to get to that later. Sorry.
Okay,
we brought it up because I was like, man, that really reminded me of something.
We did that way back in October. Retrograde.
This did feel like a Retrograde or February.
100%. And we had a question when we kicked it off. Do we think this game, given its like lo-fi nature, can scare us? You're going to have to watch the video to find out, but maybe.
Take a wild guess.
Maybe. Detective Grimoire series. They made Snipper Clips Plus on the Nintendo Switch. And it's just two brothers, Tom and Adam Vian. They call themselves the Super Flash Bros because they started by developing Flash games in 2002, which is great.
Oh, I thought they revealed themselves in public.
They do that as well in their games. In their games, but it's all like lo-fi graphics, so they get away with it. Okay. They're like, is that a testicle or is it just a square? I don't know.
I don't know.
Sure. It is flesh colored.
Is it a tube or is it a ball?
Yeah, exactly.
2 balls in a tube.
2 balls in a tube. Survival horror style game, as we mentioned. It's of the PS1 era, kind of like a Silent Hill or Resident Evil, as we've been describing. I went to the website to kind of get a bit more information. This game is so new that it doesn't even have a Wikipedia article yet, so most of the information that's out there is like press stuff. It's described as, quote, a beautiful, uncanny blend of tension and tranquility.
Is that how you feel about this game?
I kind of do. There are calm moments when you're in a room and you're just trying to solve a puzzle and you're like, what happens when I turn this?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Because you're right. There are very rarely... They do present the idea that it's either a time for a fight or it's a time for a think.
Yes.
And there's not like,
for a think.
If you're having a good think, it's not like there's a fight behind you. You know what I mean? No. It's usually one or the other. So I get that idea.
I like when games differentiate that. I hate when games mess with your safe spaces.
Yes.
I'm very coddled as a child. I need my safe spaces.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially when it comes to video games. You know what I will say about that description that kind of fucks with me a little bit? A beautiful, uncanny blend of tension and tranquility.
Beautiful?
No, uncanny. It's one of those words I feel like you can just add anywhere and no one's going to question you on it. Yeah. It's like, what does that mean in this? Uncanny?
Is this uncanny? It's like, to me it is.
You're to me. Okay, but what does that even mean? Uncanny. Uncanny to what? Not to real life.
Fair.
To like PS1 games, maybe. But you just throw it in there as a descriptor and everyone... It's like humbled. Like humbled is never used right, and people just like they're happy and they're like, I feel very humbled right now. Explain.
Well, they can't. Then they won't be humbled anymore.
Maybe.
I mean, you're right. Depending on the explanation,
on what they think it means in that in that context, I don't know. Here's another kind of description of the story. So this kind of gets at what we were touching on in the beginning of the episode. This is written and taken straight from the website. The year is 1990. Edward Crow has disappeared. The owner of Crow Country, a small theme park in the rural outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, has not been seen since he unexpectedly shut down his park 2 years ago. The silence is broken when a mysterious young woman named Mara Forrest ventures into the heart of the abandoned theme park in order to find him. Mysterious young woman. She's a cop. She says she's a cop.
Yeah, special investigator.
She's not mysterious.
Special agent or whatever. Yeah, I know. She introduces herself. Mysterious. Maybe the only reason that could be true is that maybe the longer you play this game, you find out she's like connected or
she's a crow.
Yeah. She is, of the Fairy Tale Forest. She is Mara Fairy Tale Forest herself.
That maybe she is the fairy, because some of the weird puzzles in this game you have to like talk to an animatronic fairy and it lets you through its little secret passage.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the mysterious element.
That's her mom. Who knows? Then the website questions a couple things. Are the disturbing rumors about Crow Country true? We don't know what the rumors are yet.
We don't know. We don't know. Well, that woman died 2 years ago.
That feels like a news article, not a rumor, though.
We read it in a news article.
Who exactly is Mara Forrest? That didn't seem front and center to the demo, but I'm sure we'll come to that. Why did Crow really shut down his park? Another good question.
Well, he's missing.
Oh yeah, did he even shut it down? Do the developers know what this game is about?
What game did we play? Is that this game?
Age of Empires, right?
Yeah. Whoa, we got it. Okay, absolutely.
Crow Country's story explores reckless human greed and the idea of an unforgivable sin. Features in and the game, as we mentioned on the gameplay segment as well, it features an exploration mode.
Yes,
which is for those who wish to enjoy the game without being attacked.
Okay, so now when they presented those two things, we had been selling this game as a survival horror,
right? So
we didn't give much thought to going, do you want to do exploration mode?
Sure.
But now with these descriptors, I understand why an exploration mode, because it seems like there's a real mystery behind this story, and it'll reveal that Mara, knows something or did it or, whatever. And so I understand that now.
So, I mean, I want to talk about this. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the idea of exploration modes a little bit, because video games are always have inherently involved some sort of challenge in order to unlock more story.
Right.
Resident Evil had its story. Silent Hill had its story, but in order to experience it, you had to achieve some certain level of skill. You had to beat enemies and bosses and everything like that. Now there seems to be this trend of including exploration modes. In Spider-Man, for example, you can have a no-death mode. The new Spider-Man.
Yes.
Game. In this, you can have the exploration mode is literally enemies don't attack you.
Yeah.
So you would, I assume, just run through the levels, do the puzzles, read the bulletins, and put the story together as you go.
Do you think the enemies even show up at all?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I'm just wondering.
I wonder if they do and you can shoot them, but they don't attack you.
Oh.
Because I feel like you have to see them in order to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And that turns this game into a walking sim. What are your thoughts on these sorts of game modes in video games?
I think it's totally fine. I think giving people the choice is it's a good thing. If these games have enough story-wise and back end things to make it interesting without violence every single time. Oh, that's cool. Yep. Okay, that's a pretty good idea. The only thing I'd say about that, though, is that story better be good.
Very true.
That's the only thing. It's like, the story can suck a little bit or kind of fall apart under close examination if it comes with great action and great, skill. But if it's not, then it better be able to stand on its own.
Or the puzzles must be amazing or something. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I also don't mind there being, I shouldn't even say, I fully don't care if you put an exploration mode in your video game. I think it's cool to open up video games to more people without the stigma of like, well, video games are challenging and it's a medium where you have to get good at something in order to experience the story. Like, imagine The Last of Us. I bet you there are a ton of people out there who would never want to play it because it can be a challenging game. Imagine there was a no death mode. Would that be good? Maybe.
My player one would. Because she played Last of Us, she's like, too scary.
True.
I'm like, scary.
It could still be scary, though.
It would be, but I agree with you. But you'd have a certain amount of invulnerability that you'd be like,
maybe you wouldn't feel like a pop-out scare would still scare you, but the threat of dying would be taken away.
Especially the way you died in that game too. I would say the other one is if you give someone the choice, you need to say the game was devised or designed to be this.
Yes,
a survival horror. If you'd like to play like this, here's another option.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Just so people aren't like playing the exploration mode, like this game sucks. You're like, well, wait, we were supposed to do more. You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
I actually, when I restarted Baldur's Gate 3, I played it on story mode, which makes the combat much easier. And I didn't love the combat in Baldur's Gate. I know that's sacrilege to a lot of people who hear that, but turn-based combat without like a grid system, I've always struggled with a little bit, and Baldur's Gate kind of is that. So while I learn the mechanics and everything, I have the difficulty tuned down quite a bit so I can experience the story, and I find that was the only way that got me over the hump of those initial battles where I was just dying because I didn't know, I'm not familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, so I don't know what all the spells do or how to properly build a party. It let me kind of get experimental as I learned the systems.
Yeah, you really don't know how to build a party.
I know how to tear one down.
Oh, 100%.
And you know how I do that?
What's that?
Fucking show up.
What's your build on Baldur's Gate right now?
I'm playing a bard. High charisma, my ability to just talk my way out of any situation.
Yeah.
I feel like in the first game, I wanted to play a fighter. So I was like, I'm just going to pick fights with everyone. And that's just so against my general nature that it's hard to role play as that. So I'm like, what do I usually do? Well, I'm a bit of a shithead and then I talk my way out of trouble. That's me in real life.
Yeah.
And it could be kind of fun to skirt that and see how far, like how far you can push things and then bring it back. And then I've got like, Karlak is like this giant muscular devil woman who just kicks ass. So I just have her kicking ass for me every time someone doesn't listen to my silver tongue.
Oh, that's good. Your silver tongue.
My silver tongue.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Last year, are you enjoying it or no? Oh, wow.
I want to so bad.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy it so badly.
Why do you want to enjoy it? Because people like it?
Yeah, I want to be in on the discourse. Right. I hear what people say about it, and I feel that's something that I could take to, but in action and actually playing it, it doesn't speak to me in the same way. And I'm not sure if it's just a matter of getting more comfortable with the systems or what, because I feel like if I put in 20 more hours, it might really speak to me. Like this feels like a Death Stranding thing where I've put 15 hours into it or so, and I need to put another 20 before it really works for me.
Yeah.
But there's so many other games I want to play right now. And
that's so funny. So if Baldur's Gate had a demo, speaking of, you might have not gotten hooked by it.
Not at all. In fact, on PlayStation, they had a kind of a demo where they gave you 2 hours to play whatever you want, and then obviously you had to pay to continue playing, which I like because it's not like Crow Country where we play it now. If I want to buy it, I have to redo that initial 30 minutes, which kind of sucks. It was like, hey, your 2 hours are up. Do you want to continue this character? And I'm like, man, I just finished creating my character.
Coin. Yeah, insert coin into CPU.
Exactly, but that's a good version of a demo to me because it doesn't mean you have to replay anything. Would I have continued doing it? Probably not. I'd already bought it at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. Instead, I picked up fucking Sekiro, and I am absolutely adoring it this time. There you go. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Nice. I'll spend more time talking about Sekiro on a future episode because it's been before we get back to Crow Country, do you have any new games, any updates that you know? No, nice. Still the Fortnites, the MLBs.
Yeah.
I have been thinking about getting involved in MLB lately.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because I watch a lot of baseball now, and I love sports games, so why not?
Okay, well, let me know if you do. Give me some hints.
Let's talk about some reception, not our reception on the game, but just to kind of color our conversation moving forward as we start to talk more and more about our specific experiences while we were playing the demo. The reception so far on Steam is very positive. I checked last night the reviews for the game. This is a couple days post-release, so we're recording this a little bit ahead of release. The reviews were at like 200 or so. They were set as very positive. The only tier above that is overwhelmingly positive. But they were growing, like, from the moment I looked, it was like 170 reviews, and I was kind of like trying to pick some that we could read on the podcast. By the time I finished, it was like 230 reviews.
Right,
like,
wow.
It's growing, and people are paying attention to it.
Yeah.
People have had this kind of circled on the radar for a while. So I just kind of love this retro renaissance of games that pay homage to these earlier games.
Yeah, I do too. There is something weirdly recessive about it where you're just kind of like, oh, okay, is this what we're going to do? Sometimes it's used as a gimmick, and sometimes it's like a clutch that people have, and a crutch that people have. And I just don't know, like, does this is it better because of the aesthetic of 1990s because it's based in the 1990s?
Sure.
Or is it because you're like, we didn't have the budget to make it look good? And I just find sometimes like, I just don't, it's something people are doing a lot.
Yeah.
And I go, when this aesthetic in general is no longer aiding the game and just becomes like, okay, another one of these.
It's a good question. I don't know if it's as much a cop-out. I think it can be, because I think you're playing on people's nostalgia, but you really do have to bring something new to the equation. I think what it is instead is almost like an admission that maybe we don't always need to push the boundaries of new games. Maybe there were eras of games that worked because they were specifically in those eras. Yeah. You know, we're always trying to find the new thing and the better thing, and often that comes in the forms of refined mechanics.
Right.
So Crow Country doesn't have tank controls like Resident Evil did. It has like a fully, you're running around, and that just feels like a more fun way to control a game like this. And then it lets us go back to like a simpler time in gaming. And I'm finding as AAA titles try to appease the masses and appeal to as many people as possible, where there's open world exploration and a ton of things to check off and a whole world to live in, sometimes I just want to simplify it. Solitaire is great as solitaire. You don't need to add 16 more decks. And we talked about on our Microsoft Entertainment Pack episode, the worst versions of solitaire are the secondary versions of solitaire. It works as its game, but then you get spider solitaire and pyramid solitaire and this and that. And it's like, no, just give me, it was good like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you add to it and it expands the scope and you think that's a good thing, but it works to go back and just visit your roots of like these simpler times in gaming.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think that's completely fair. And I do think it works for this game. So I'm not really necessarily talking about this, but it is just a trend that you see. And you start going like, okay, well, I wonder how many more times we can go to this well.
That I totally agree with. Yeah. And I think anytime there's success in the video game space, because of something new a developer did, and even if that new thing is reviving classic mechanics, as it starts to be mimicked, it starts to be mimicked poorly. Yeah. And I'll use FromSoft as an example. That style of a Dark Souls game where every time you sit at a bonfire, you revive the enemies, and death is, it's a more challenging game, and death means you lose experience and all this. That works. And now every company is mimicking that style, and they think that just because they mimic the style, it's going to be good, and it starts to get diluted and feel worse. So if more companies start to realize that, hey, we can dial our budget back and create like a PS1 era game and sell gangbusters. Yeah. If there's no heart in it, it's not going to work. And the true test is playing the game and seeing if it works for us.
Yeah. No, totally fair.
So let's go to some of the reviews here.
Okay.
I picked 3 that I thought were worth sharing. These are pulled from the Steam store. Meat.
Okay.
Meat is their profile name.
Very
says,
good.
If you're looking for a sign to get Crow Country, this is it. As someone who's played a lot of both Resident Evil and Silent Hill, this is the one. Great review. Positive.
Okay.
Not funny, just good.
Yeah. Sorry, I was waiting for a punchline.
Nope.
Okay.
Day says, better than Silent Hill 2.
Whoa.
And that, I don't know if it's tongue in cheek. I don't know if that feels like that's a big stance, because Silent Hill 2 is often seen as like the best survival horror game there is.
Somebody's trying to get their name out there. Day.
And then Jessica says more content than the Resident Evil 3 remake, which is kind of funny. It feels like of all the remakes, that's the one that kind of phoned it in the most, although it was decent enough. The interesting thing here, and this is kind of to your point, we talked about in the gameplay segment, would this appeal to people who didn't have experience playing this era of game? People who've only grown up playing Fortnite and whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Every one of these reviews is referencing an old game.
Yeah. So it's not even, originally I was kind of talking about graphically, and then biggest game in the world is probably Minecraft and, whatever it looks like that. So I can't, whatever, I can get past that. But there are certain tropes inside of these style of games that you find yourself working against or accepting because you have so much experience doing it.
Right.
If you never played any of those games, how would you get annoyed by this? Would you understand the appeal of but I need this is a bronze keyhole. I must need a bronze key.
It would just feel like bad writing.
Yeah, to find the bronze key, you must, the bronze key. And then you open the bronze key and he opens the door and then you go, to find the ruby the ruby. It's like a fucking episode of Mandalorian. So I get that part. Would you find that appealing, or would you bump up against it because it's not an experience you have fond memories of? I don't know. It's essentially a fetch quest. It's a fetch quest inside of a fetch quest. It's like a Matryoshka doll that you just go in and edit. And so I do get that idea. I wonder, I don't know. It does also feel like the core of video games. So you would, if you like video games, you probably would like that.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Over time, it feels like video games have done a better job of hiding the mechanics, like those cheesy fetch quest mechanics, layering it with better skins and making it feel less like a mechanic and more like storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm really curious if anyone is out there who is young enough to have not played like a Resident Evil or one of these old style, almost like cheesy survival horror games before they knew they were being cheesy. And you've played this. Did you enjoy it? I'm so interested to find that out. But here's a line of questioning that I want to bring us down.
Please.
I don't know if this is worth even exploring, but I just had this thought as you were talking because I wasn't listening. All art forms out of necessity start simple and grow. Yeah. You know, even like hieroglyphs to like Greco-Roman art changing like the styles to like Christian art becoming more realistic to then impressionist to cubism to all this stuff almost grows as a result of being like, hey, here's something new that we can do.
Yeah.
But looking back, once the art form has matured enough, people can pick and choose which elements of all of these different stages of that art form they want to incorporate into a new piece. And just because you use cubism instead of like realism doesn't mean it's a worse painting. It's an artistic choice to build the look and feel that you want. So with video games, we started with Pong because that's all we could do. Then you build some 2D using like smaller pixels. You know, you got 8-bit and the 1632, all this. Now we've got crazy high fidelity graphics, but the ability to look back on different eras of gaming and incorporate those styles into a thesis statement of a game that you're building now. Is that the same thing, or is it different somehow because mechanics are different than an image in painting?
I would say technology in general has a tougher time appreciating past nostalgia than a book or a painting or a movie or, you know, whatever, because of the participatory element of it. You have to use it, right? And it's tough using some things. It's frustrating and you don't get to enjoy it as much when you could go, but the newest one is most likely the best one or whatever.
Right.
I agree. Yeah, like it's always just one of those things where it's like, we have vinyl. We love collecting vinyl. Vinyl's so big. And you're like, you know what's big? Spotify. Like vinyl is popular. I totally get that. I have vinyl, you have vinyl, you at home. We spend way too much money on vinyl.
Yeah.
But Spotify has billions of users. So like it's kind of it's a niche appeal. And if it might not be anything more than that because that is the technology side.
Sure.
I don't know, who knows? But I don't think in 100 years there'll be museums for video games in every city that you have to go visit and go try. Oh, when we were building video games back in the day, this is what this was. You know what I mean? I think it's a more niche appeal to appreciate older stuff, but because at the end of the day, most of the focus will be on the new stuff, where that isn't necessarily true of the other things I listed earlier.
Right, but that's more the physical technology of the medium itself, as opposed to the aesthetics that resulted from, you know, like if a modern song incorporated crackle and pops into like a digital recording to achieve that kind of vinyl like warmth to it, that would be kind of, it's like you don't need, that was a result of an inherent flaw in the technology that you're now incorporating. The low poly resolution in Crow Country is being mimicked, even though it doesn't have to be, because modern games we can have photorealism. But would the story make sense if you're looking at bronze keys and silver keys with like God of War style graphics?
Unfortunately, though, I think the technology is inseparable from the actual experience of playing it, because it's not something you play without the technology that is needed.
For sure.
I see what you're saying. And I like the analogy. I like the idea that we are going to keep getting better and better, and then realistically, you know, it'll be the best it could ever be, and then we break it, and then it'll be broken down into parts. That'll be, you know, modern realism and all the kind of stuff that we use now. So I don't know. I wonder if it will, and I'm very curious about the future, or is it just going to go forever until like it's the most real thing of all time? It touches you, like whoa, you know, crazy.
Does it become a different medium at that point?
Exactly.
Like it almost would have to. You know, virtual reality would be video games, sure, in the same way that like movies are storytelling and video games are storytelling, but there's a whole leap in interactivity, or like books versus movies or something like that.
I think movies is a good example though, because if they did virtual reality movies when you're in the movie, that would not probably be movies anymore. It would probably be something else. Thing.
Exactly. I like the conversation because it seems like this is the first time we've really, you know, in the last 5-10 years or so, among the first times we've really looked backwards in gaming and purposely designed things that were, for lack of a better word, worse in quality.
Okay, yeah.
In certain ways. Some people are going out there and creating new games for the Game Boy. Like if you have I can't remember the name of it. It's the handheld, the
one you
analog
have?
pocket. No, the analog pocket. No, that's the Playdate. If you have an analog pocket, you can sideload like newly created Game Boy games that look and feel exactly like the era. And I love that. I do. I think it's very cool that we now get to pick and choose from all these different eras and time zones from the art form for what works. Because there is something appealing about the fact that we're playing. The fact that these are video games, so there can be a silliness. We don't have to take it so seriously. And in order to incorporate that tone and this weird writing of like a notepad pinned to the side of a wall that's like, so someone took out the wrench from the crate and I hid it in an ocean somewhere. You've got to go find it. It only really works if it echoes that era. And sure, maybe like modern game players are missing a little bit of the nostalgia factor, but if you're a fan of movies like Citizen Kane, great, very well made, but you do have to concede a little bit. Like it's not as easy to watch as like a modern day game. Or a modern day movie. So I think a lot of the time when people are fans of a medium, they have to learn how to appreciate the different eras for what they were. And this could be a good step to that.
Well, I know. I totally understand what you're saying. And I think it does capture that moment, pretty well.
Yeah. So let's talk then specifically about the game before we get into our reviews a little bit. I know we kind of talked about the point-to-point being involved in whatever I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
we talked a lot about our general thoughts on the game and kind of some of the steps that we took to get there. Overall, you as not a huge fan of survival horror games, were you intrigued by this? Because this was one of the first times where I was like, and do you want to control? And you're like, I think we got it. Like, I think,
Yeah. I do, I think that I will say that I think the description in which you gave earlier, but all the mysteries sounded more fun than the actual mysteries of playing the game.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think the shooting, you got to tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think it was like super captivating. I think it was more perfunctory.
Yeah. So to explain the shooting a little bit, in Resident Evil, you kind of just like press a button to ready your weapon and shoot in the general direction of a zombie and hope you get a headshot, and you shoot them a couple times and they go,
little blood.
Little blood squirting out all over the place. They fall down, you step on their head. That feels really cool.
Yeah,
do you think you could crush a human skull by stepping on it?
No.
I bet, it'd be tough.
I think the human skull's pretty tough.
I think it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
But what if you've already shot it once?
So there's like art. Yeah, it depends.
There's structural integrity is compromised.
Yeah.
Of this human skull laying on the ground.
Not to make it too like specific, but it has to be like the dome part of your head, right?
I think so.
Not like the jaw.
No, the jaw I think would be easy enough.
You think it would be easy?
Easier because there's a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah, then maybe yeah. If I had a good boot on.
Yeah. Like a police issue boot.
Interesting.
Something that makes you like run from stop and frisk really fast, but still maintain some of the weight and heft of
Yeah, maybe I could. Yeah,
I think so.
Especially a zombie that's been dead for a while.
Well, would the skeleton rot? I don't know.
I don't think it's doing great.
I don't think it's not drinking its milk. We know that.
Exactly. It's like, they're coming up.
But there is milk. There's a lot of protein in the human body.
There is an iron, you know?
Yeah. and I'll tell you what, when I'm done with it, a lot of lead as well.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, absolutely. Rubber and lead.
Rubber and lead. So in the Resident Evil games, you're not really choosing as much like where you're going to shoot. And this is similar to Holston, which we played a while back on the podcast. There is an aiming mechanic in this where you hold to bring up your gun, and then you can aim up, down, left, right. Yeah. You can aim at targets in the environment. You can aim at a kneecap or a head. The enemies are typical survival horror bullet sponges. So to take one out, one-on-one will like empty half a clip, and you're lucky to have a full clip at any point in this game. So there is that feeling. Was it captivating? I think it kind of was.
Yeah.
There's a weird feeling you get when you play a game in a style that you've never played before, where it's kind of this top-down isometric perspective. So aiming straight ahead of you is weird, and it takes your brain a while to get used to. Whereas in Holston, it brings it third person, like Resident Evil style when you aim. In this, it keeps the same perspective, and you just have to kind of get used to that awkwardness of aiming towards an enemy that's coming at you, but not being able to look directly at it.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
But I kind of liked it.
No, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. The mystery, it seemed all pretty straightforward, you know, unless there's some big reveal that they're building up to, which maybe they are, you know, and not that a big reveal would pay off every part of the experience right before that, but like, it all seemed very like, okay.
That's a great point. Here's a question I'll ask you. Based on what they've set up, there's this carnival that's been shut down. There was something happened to a person there that they got injured. The owner was being sued. The owner went missing. There's a dig site happening. They've been questioned. There's clearly something like untowards going on with this dig site. So it's setting up like unearthing some sort of evil. Is there anything about that entire premise, the mystery of the protagonist included, that could present itself to make you be like, wow, that was a great story? Is there anything that they can do?
Yeah, probably. You know, it's like a million monkeys with typewriters. Like, of course, there's a version of that story that you're like, oh, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I guess it's up to them to like pay it off or not. But I would say that the way they're going about it isn't really reinventing the wheel, and they're not trying to. They're trying to, you know, stick to a premise that works.
Yeah.
So like, I can't, you know, give them too much credit until, I guess, which is always tough with these kind of things. It's like, well, I can't really judge it until I play the whole thing. But at the end of the day, like the steps getting to that process were not scintillating.
Yeah.
And there's probably a version of that could be very interesting at the end.
Yeah. But it's funny, like you describe, you know, you're like, we're not here for the shooting, we're here for the story. And then I'm like, based on how they're kind of pigeonholing themselves in telling a purposely generic story with purposely silly writing, I'm like, I can't imagine walking away from that and being like, wow, that really got to me.
Yeah.
It almost just has to
That was like my relationship with my mother. You're like, whoa, okay.
Had to shoot her in the head 5 times and stomp on her skull with a boot.
Yeah. I told her I love her right before that.
And then right after as well.
Yeah, right.
I don't think she heard me.
Yeah. You know, I agree with you, but like, who knows? Maybe it's like, you know, a big mystery science, you know, whatever. I don't know, science fiction kind of thing, but I don't know. They're explaining the game a little bit better than my actual playing felt.
That's true. When they color the mystery, like the whole thing about the main character, like where does she come from and this and that, that's going to be told in like a newspaper article or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, because you're purposely being reserved in the way you're telling the story to feel like a 1990s game. I hadn't thought about it until you brought it up, but like, I can't imagine this. I can't imagine the story being the thing that I walk away from being like, that was great.
Now, okay, here, that stall. So there was a washroom stall that we couldn't open.
Oh, true.
Because there was something inside.
Yes.
It was clearly moving.
Yes.
But like kind of like breathing, like nothing like attacking or anything like that. I open that stall and it's Mara Forrest, myself. And I see the tag and I'm like, wait a second, that's me. And the demo ends. I'm saying something very different right now.
That's a great point.
Where I'm like, whoa.
In fact, we should talk about the way that
the end of the demo. Yes.
The whole time you're going through, you see doors that can't be open unless you have a bronze key, doors that can't be open unless you have a silver key, all pretty standard. There's a ride that is going to let you get past a certain area that you need a certain egg-shaped object to get through.
You need a crank for the egg, whatever.
A drill or something. So it's setting up this world where you know you're going to have to get all these different puzzle pieces. You're not sure of the order, but that's part of the problem is like figuring out how to get to this. And then you find a note. It's like, well, you can't do this until you find this. So you go backtrack. That's a fun process to me. And I do really like that. But right when we kind of got a hold of, okay, this is the order of operations that we have to do, we walk through one door and the demo ends.
Yeah.
Like you said, not a boss fight.
No. There was a big skeleton.
Yeah, there was a big skeleton.
But
who we could just easily walk around.
You could walk through with.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal. And then it ends. It's like, thanks for playing. Would you like to buy the booth? You're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. So it didn't end really with a hook. It was more experiential, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's up to each their own.
But it is funny, like when I started saying that, I was like, yeah, you know what? It was a weird ending. Like to end on such an offbeat feels like a strange call for a demo. But going back and describing it, it did just kind of show us everything we had to do.
Yeah.
And then ends. Now, to end it literally like you walk through a hallway, fade to black by the demo, and you're like, oh, whoa, what? Is weird. But it did give me a complete impression of what this game is going to expect.
100%. It didn't lie to you. It's not like some trailer where you're like, oh, all the good parts were in the trailer. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I completely agree with you. So like, they're being honest with you.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's good. I think as the person, so if you went back and watched the gameplay, great. If you haven't, to explain it, kind of like what we do sometimes on the podcast, one of us controls and one of us kind of like gives directions and is involved in the storytelling. As you mentioned, the mechanics, like the moment to moment mechanics, are not incredibly fun or incredibly engaging, so to speak. So it doesn't matter as much whether you're backseat playing or holding the controller. But as the person who's holding the controller most of the time, I felt like maneuvering through the environment on a modern controller as opposed to like an old PlayStation controller with modern non-tank controls and the ability to aim felt very, very good.
Okay.
Yeah. So if nothing else, the ability to explore this kind of game with modern controls, I'm giving it a big leg up.
Oh, nice.
Sort of thing. Anything else to note about our experience during the demo before we get into our reviews?
No, we tried to read everything possible.
We did, yeah.
I really don't think we ignored a lot. And I also think we were able to do pretty much everything we could during the demo.
That's true.
I don't think we raced ahead or anything like that. So I would feel very confident, at least, judging the demo, yeah.
And I will say again, the best benefit of having modern day games that are paying homage to retro games is the modern day conveniences that developers have learned, not only the controls, but every note that you read in the world.
Right.
When you get to a save room, which is very typical of a survival horror game, there's a notebook there that compiles everything you've read, which means you don't have to run back and forth or where did I read this on the wall or what was it? If there's like a combination somewhere, you can find it in the safe room, which is just like chef's kiss brilliant. I love stuff like that. Don't waste my time. When you find an NPC and you heal them, you have to like bring them back to your cop car all the way at the start of the level. And instead of it making you do that, it just kind of fades to black and starts you at the start of that one screen. And it's like, I just walked him back to the car.
Yeah.
Whereas in an older game, it would have made you do that. Those conveniences are fantastic to me. I love that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like that's just smartening up what was, clunky in the past.
Exactly.
So you want to get into our scores?
Let's do it. So typically what we do on the podcast when we do play a retro game is we give the game a rating based on our thoughts when we played it as a little kid. That's out of 4 bits. And then we rate it and review it again out of 4 bits based on how it holds up in the modern day against like some modern games like Sekiro, like MLB The Show, like everything in between. Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3, game of the year last year. How does Crow Country hold up against it? Man, so Andrew, Crow Country, do you want to give your thoughts and impressions on the demo, a review out of 4 bits based on what you think you would have thought about it had you played it back in its intended release date around the 1990s?
It's funny. We talked about Flash games earlier because the brothers, developed a lot of Flash games or style of Flash games.
The Super Flash Bros.
Brothers. Yeah, exactly. Predators. I could see myself playing a game like this on a web browser.
Yeah, okay.
A version of this. Yep. Yeah, it wouldn't have probably been as detailed.
Sure.
There would have been but there's games like this that I totally understand that.
Totally.
I would have liked that.
Newgrounds, by the way, was the reference
there you
I was trying to make,
wow.
earlier. Yeah,
okay, nice.
To a Flash website, which I think was on the gameplay segment. So
I couldn't. I would be intrigued by this. The puzzles were good enough as a kid that would have kept me going, and they were easy enough. The other one too is like they're sometimes it can be so tough with like what you have to remember, what you have to like. Was that blue or whatever?
Yeah.
No, the codes are nice and big. Where you're supposed to put them in is nice and easy. Yep. I would have loved that as a kid. I think I would have liked this a lot. It would have been easy enough. I think I'm going to give it a 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4. That's great. So that's a retro score for Andrew. My retro score, like I said earlier on the podcast, I really struggled with survival horror. But the ways in which I struggled with it was A, it was too scary, but B, that the scariness was compounded by an anxiety around a lack of control. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if this game came out relative to like a Resident Evil and it's like, hey, you don't need tank controls anymore. You got this one.
Yeah.
This would put it above. And, going back to that review by Day on Steam, if this were played side by side with a Silent Hill or a Resident Evil, I might actually like it better as a kid. Granted, I didn't like those games too much as a kid because they scared the shit out of me and because of those controls. So I kind of agree with you. I think those conveniences would have felt revolutionary at the time while still feeling within its place and being, friendly enough that me as a young person could play it. I think I'm also going to give it a 3 out of 4.
Okay, 3 out of 4, 2 3 out of 4. That's 6 out of 8. My current score, this is the battle I've been kind of facing the whole episode I've been thinking about, is that you really have to love this style of game to love this game. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, just to think that this game compares favorably to modern games.
Sure.
you can love this game and go like, oh, it was a totally fine game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not really love the style or love the concept or love the genre and go like, yeah, that was okay. But if you're going to give this a really good score, it's because you love this style of game.
Yeah.
Because there's just no way you can play this game and then go like, and I'm going to turn on whatever good, like Alan Wake 2.
Sure. Yeah.
And then,
yes. Great.
And then
point.
be like, oh yeah, 1-to-1.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about this, you know, in my opinion. So since this isn't my style of game, I just couldn't imagine picking up and being like, holy shit, did you play Crow Country?
Yeah.
I'm not gay, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So unfortunately it's going to go down a little bit for me, but 2.5.
Okay.
Because I think it's a totally respectable, fine game. It's just not going to, it's just, I'm not the guy that's going to leave a huge impression on it.
I get that. I mean, it's the same kind of premise as like, you know, a movie that films in black and white, and some people are like, I get it's a stylistic choice, but like we have color for a reason now, like that kind of thing. I know where you're coming from with that sort of stance. However, it works for me.
Yeah.
I talk all the time about how the modern concept of a AAA game just does not speak to me. So I need these weird, quirky things. I watched with my player one the other night, Late Night with the Devil, which was a movie that was just so weird. And I don't even know if it was good, but it was different. And I'm like, that's what I'm looking for sometimes. This felt different in a familiar way, which I think is a great achievement. It plays on all the same tropes as a classic survival horror game. You bring up Alan Wake, which I think is a good comparison because Alan Wake doesn't exist without the games that
100%.
this game is paying homage to. And this just kind of lo-fi's it, makes it a little bit more manageable. It's not quite as scary, so I'm a big fan of that. Even though I did scream like a baby at one point because a bunch of giant cockroaches popped out. I really enjoyed my time with this. I like that it's bite-sized. I like that it apparently is only about 6 hours long. The demo got me very intrigued, and I can't wait to go back to Crow Country, which I'm giving a 3.5 out of 4.
3.5 out of 4. There we go. 4, 6, 12. 12. We're getting a 12 out of 16.
12 out of 16 is a solid score.
Very good score.
I think it does a lot to warrant that. I understand if it's not for everyone, specifically for the reasons that you said, Andrew. But I'd be curious, you know, if you did force yourself to spend more time with it, if you would take to it. But I don't feel like that's in the cards for you. I think it's just kind of,
I don't think so, but you know, who knows? You know, it's really tough because maybe that story is really captivating, and maybe you're like, oh my goodness, you know, like you know,
that would be a great thing if that happened.
The way
you described it, if it is Mara. So when you said that, I'm like, oh, there are ways in which you can make this different.
Oh, for sure. I absolutely, maybe the missing girl is Mara. Like I don't know. There's all these things that could be, you know, that could be interesting. So I just wonder if they're going to push themselves in that way.
Well, I will let you know after I beat this game because I think I'm going to get it on the Steam Deck and give it quite a bit more try. It's going to be that and Sekiro, so two very, very different games that I've been playing.
I totally understand that as a back-to-back. Yeah, 100%.
So Andrew, do you want to head over to the award ceremony? Because I have a feeling this one might get one. I'm not sure, but there's only one way to find out.
Okay.
Let's head on over to the red carpet.
Let's do it.
You've been waiting for it all year. The most glamorous award ceremony of the week. Ladies and gentlemen, the Grady's.
Yeah, that was great.
That was great.
Wow, beautiful.
Never get tired of that sound of flashing cameras.
I love it. Yeah.
It's my favorite sound.
Yeah, that classic. Everyone still shoots on film. That's so interesting over here. Yeah. Wow.
I like when you have to like take a picture and then throw away a light bulb. That's my favorite.
I do too. Yeah. Like it almost explodes.
Yeah.
You got to put a little towel over it. Like, Jesus Christ. I like to and then I just throw it, and then I just wait for
like a
big
grenade.
Explosion. Yeah.
Do you actually bite the bottom off of it?
No, that'd be very bad. I think it's filled with like poison or something like that.
Well, I mean, it would explain a lot about you.
It would.
The fact that you're bleeding out of your eyes.
Yep.
The fact that you're bleeding out of your ears.
Yeah, right. No, that's normal.
The fact that you smell sour.
Do I?
Right now? Have you been eating?
Smell?
What?
You can smell?
You can't smell. Is that again because of the light bulbs?
It's not because of light bulbs.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Light bulbs give you COVID?
Elliot, help me out.
Oh, there's Elliot. Dressed in his best low poly. I like that he made a jacket that is just one piece of fabric that's kind of a square to look kind of like the characters. It's made out of cylinders and circles.
Polly Pocket was originally named Low Poly.
Mighty Max was apparently also low poly.
It's solid. Good finish. All right, Elliot. All right, let us know what awards this game has won.
The hermetically sealed vault of expectations.
Oh, good. We do it once, we do it twice.
I got to remind them of it because I know they just heard it, but then like they want to hear it a second time.
Oh, God.
The hermetically sealed Vault of Expectations is when the score in the retrograde is just...
Jesus Christ, are you okay?
I got so scared at one point in this game, and I've been just trying to recover from it.
Usually I'm mad when you yell, and then I jump because you're yelling.
Yeah.
But in this one, I laughed so hard because I jump and then look at you, and I laughed because I was like, that guy,
Did it get you as well?
No. We'll watch the video again. We can watch it back in slow motion, and you can see you yell, and then me jump, and then look over at you, and then I couldn't stop laughing.
That's usually the way it works.
Yeah.
A hermetically sealed Vault of Expectations.
Oh my God. The hermetically sealed Vault of Expectations,
Thanks,
which
Andrew.
of course means that the score is better in no, it's the same.
It's the exact same.
It's the exact
it's
same.
hermetically sealed.
Right. So, of course, that's exactly what that means. It's amazing because it came in two different ways. Both threes early.
That's it.
But then a 2.5 and a 3.5, very different thoughts, but get us back to the
overall
same
score is the same. Where you went down, I went up, and kept it all similar. I think it's warranted, man. I think a 12 is a good score for this.
12 is a good score.
Yeah.
Based on how we usually score games, 12 is a totally good score.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, hey, that was Crow Country. Let us know what you think of Crow Country because it seems like a lot of people are playing this game.
Yeah.
But until then, we love every single one of you, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. My name's Andrew Bascom, and with me, as always, is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself,
Mikey Aaronworth.
This is the Retrograde Podcast.
Game over.
Yeah, was there enough crows?
There's one big one. That's all I need, baby.
What the hell does that mean?
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
You know you're a creep, right?